one instance, John, where your wedding ring ended up in our food order. I'm not quite sure how that happened, but I hope you got it back, my friend.
Yeah, that was quite something. I just first got married and mixing some meatballs, afraid to get it dirty, put it in a pocket. Next thing I know, I hear you guys on the radio with your takeout order, and the ring was there.
Yeah. Well, at least you know where it went, so it didn't go too far. And you did get it back, yes?
Yes, I did.
Okay, very good. I just wanted to make sure. Thanks for coming in this morning. Ataxia. This is one subject matter I haven't really had an opportunity to talk a whole lot about. I think we've brought it up about 5 or 6 years ago with another show. But obviously, this is something that you're living with, right?
Exactly, yeah. Yes, Sam.
And what is exactly ataxia, and how does it affect the human body?
Ataxia is a neurological problem. It stems from your cerebellum. It shrinks. As it shrinks, you lose the capability of motor skills, coordination. So my day usually is very difficult to start off. It's very difficult to put a pair of socks on, to button your shirts, to put on a pair of pants, to maneuver around the house. The other challenge in life is that I have the ability to walk. Sometimes I use a wheelchair depending on what my leg strength is. If I'm walking and I don't have a cane or something, it's the perception of being drunk, and it's a kind of an invisible disease. So people don't see it, and you look kind of funny. Most people with ataxia have very bad speech. I'm very fortunate that it really hasn't affected my speech yet.
Right, yeah, I mean, obviously. And you know, again, before we came out of the air, we were talking about how you were on my good friend Hank Stoltz's show quite a bit. Hank's been on this show, Community Conversations, before as well. Kind of a small broadcasting community here in central Massachusetts. But as you said, Hank is your biggest supporter.
Yeah, Hank joined us about 7 years ago, again, not knowing anything about ataxia, and through the 7 years, he's helped us build our walk that we have annually in September. Senator Mauro is one of our biggest helpers in passing some legislation this year that makes September 25th Ataxia Awareness Day in the state of Massachusetts. Okay. And that was a 2-year process, but that was a step in the right area.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's nice to hear. Now, Senator Mauro was originally going to try and join us today, but we'll have to reschedule him for a later date because, you know, obviously this is a subject matter that we want to make people aware of, which is why we do Community Conversations, because if we didn't, and you wouldn't be aware of this situation. Now, you think sometimes, and I know you don't feel this way, John, because you know better, but sometimes you feel like you're alone. You know, if somebody's just diagnosed with ataxia, they may feel like they're the only person in the world that has it. That's a natural human response, I would say. Is that kind of the way you felt when you first got diagnosed?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I'm a very strong person, and I always try to look at the other side. So I spent a very close few moments thinking about it's only me, why did it happen to me? And right away, my instincts were to, okay, so how do I make a change? How do I make a difference? And then I got involved with the National Ataxia Foundation. And through the years, I've opened up a lot of support groups. We have over 180 members here just in Massachusetts. And it's all, it's by these radio programs. People hear about ataxia, then all of a sudden I get an email. I never knew that this was in the area. Right. It's very difficult to reach these people. And again, there's only 150,000 people estimated throughout the United States that actually have it.
So that's a very, very small percentage. When you think 150,000 people, you think about it, well, that's a lot of people, but not in context when you think of the total population of the continental U.S., and that's just in the U.S. now, is what John said. Now, around the world, I'm sure, maybe 150, maybe even more, 1,000 people who have ataxia. Fortunately, you're living in the U.S. where we have great medical facilities. There's no doubt about that. Now, does that work out for you? Do you have to go to see a specialist or a doctor every couple of weeks or every couple of months? How does that schedule work for you?
anybody that shows signs of ataxia, we call it the neurology nightmare. You see your local neurologist, and you might go through 2, 3, and they've never seen these signs because they don't run into many people.
Right.
Eventually, you're steered to Boston, where we have an ataxia unit, and it's one of the best ones in the country. And right away when I went there, they picked up on it and said, "You have ataxia." And I'm just like you, never heard of ataxia. It was like, what is that?
Yeah, right. Now, this is something. When did you get diagnosed?
7 years ago.
7 years ago.
Yes.
You're doing pretty well. You're doing well. I got to say, but that comes from your inner strength, though, too. I mean, I'm sure there are people who have had it for 7 years, perhaps more, who have a big struggle with it. Obviously, you're struggling with it, but I have a sense that you said, I'm a strong person just a couple of minutes ago. I could see that, though. That's probably how you may be able to cope better, maybe become that leader for these groups in this area.
Well, that's what we've tried. Here in New England, we've tried something different. We have support groups all over the country, and they're really spread really out. What we did here is we joined all the support groups together. So I work with them locally, and we've created one large team. And we have a walk every year. It was very difficult for us to raise funds because people would say to me, "What is ataxia?" Well, if people don't know what it is, it's very difficult to get the funding. So 3 years ago, I started this campaign that I was going to go out and to kind of, brand the name ataxia. So at least when I brought it up, people said, "Oh, I heard something about this." So
Sure.
that would be a breakthrough. So over the last year, I started this educational piece where I'm now going into the high schools, and I'm trying to spark the interest of the children that are seniors that are going into college, because God knows we all go into college. We kind of know what we want to do, but we really don't. We're just going, trying to spark their interest into the science field, in hope that they might actually take up a field in science, but maybe do a project on ataxia because they want to do something different if they have to do a project. That did pan out this year. We had a girl at Boston College, and on the final exam, there was a question was, "What is ataxia?" and name 3 symptoms on it. That was huge because that never would have ever made it.
Right, exactly. Communication is the key to everything. When we're talking about all the different subject matters we cover here on Community Conversations, this is no different from that because we want to bring it to the public light. We want people to be aware of these situations in this country with ataxia and how we can organize better. Now, you have all of your cancer organizations. You have all of your diabetes organizations. You have all these organizations. Is there a national ataxia organization?
Yeah, there's a National Ataxia Foundation out in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. It's been established in 1957 by the Scott family. They were one of the 2 that had ataxia, and they started this foundation. From there, it's grown now we're researching over $2 million worth that are going towards like 20 to 25 research programs, and it's all what we do on the walks. That's where our money comes from. Most of the research is done all over the country. There's some great things happening, and there's also a lot of great things happening in Boston because we have so many different hospitals and we got so many clinics going on and study trials, and so there are a lot of promising things coming up.
Absolutely. Right here in Worcester, look at all of the biotech going on. Look at all the pharmacy tech going on. Of course, you've got great hospitals in here. Now, obviously, they sent you to Boston because that's where the best place for you to go is at this point. They're a little bit more advanced as far as their scientific studies and their medical studies on ataxia. They're quite a bit further down the road than we are here in Worcester, but you never know where that breakthrough is going to come from, do you, John? I mean, it can come right from Shrewsbury. It can come right from downtown Worcester. It can come from anywhere. But again, it's all about the discussion, and that's why we're having this talk this morning on ataxia with John Mauro in the studio on Community Conversations. Now, going forward, cure research, I mean, have things been better as far as technology advances and advances the quality of life that you have living with ataxia?
Yeah, there is no cure for any types of the ataxia. What we do is you try to better the quality of life. You try to manage your diagnosement. In the last 3 years, there's been a lot of breakthroughs through the parts of the cerebellum, which was always led to believe that it just totally controlled all your motor skills, or anything that you do without thinking comes from your cerebellum. It has a lot more to do with it. It has a lot to do with your cognate, your memory, your emotions, your feelings. And these are things that really play on people. And you know what, there are probably another 100,000 people out there that are undiagnosed or misdiagnosed that we're always finding out, labeled under something else, and when later on time comes, they find out that they didn't have that it was ataxia.
That is where we need to make the improvements, don't we? I mean, early detection, you always hear about it with mammograms. You hear about early detection with a lot of other symptoms and things that afflict people. Diabetes. I deal with diabetes in my family. My youngest stepson has diabetes, and that came out of nowhere. We didn't, nobody else in the family has diabetes. Now, my father had it, but again, it's my stepson, so not biological. But nobody on the biological side of my wife's family has diabetes. So it just popped up. See, this is where you have to. And I know, John, you can attest to this. You really have to take each day. Don't take it for granted each day, right? I mean, because
absolutely.
Tomorrow can bring you something that you don't want any part of. And we preach that all the time here on Community Conversations. Really, live life to the fullest and all that. But take each day and make the best of it, because, you could be diagnosed tomorrow with something like ataxia or diabetes. Now, this was something that leading up to your diagnosis, was this something that you felt that maybe I'm just not feeling right, I don't feel well, maybe it's the flu, maybe it's, a million other things. I mean, obviously you didn't know about ataxia at the time, but is that sort of how it kind of crept up on you?
Yeah, there's multiple types. There are hereditary and there are acquired, and mine was later on I went for a simple day surgery, and any stress or trauma to the body can turn one of those genes over.
Oh, okay.
And that's where some of the signs were starting to come later on in my life, and that triggered how it brought on the ataxia.
How much time are we talking from when you had that day surgery to when you were actually diagnosed?
3 years.
3 years. So,
yeah. It was slow. It was muscle twitching. I kept bumping into doors. You just put it on to clumsiness. Some of the speech or words, I couldn't say some of the syllables. Swallowing. I have to use a straw all the time. I really don't eat in public because it takes 2 or 3 times to swallow something down. So
right.
It's a something you don't like to do all in public.
Right. Exactly. I can totally understand that. I mean, obviously you have a lot of pride, you like to do things on your own, and get by on your own. I can see how this could be really, really tough for you, obviously, but in these situations, it seems somebody with your strength, right, and your intelligence and your ability to rally people around you, like my good friend Hank Stoltz or Senator Michael Moore, or all the people that you rally around you every September for your walk. This is something that you've taken a negative and turned into a positive.
Absolutely. And not only do we raise money, and that's the positive part, the people with attacks